Welcome, everybody, to the Monday Motivation Spotlight, your podcast where every single Monday you get inspiration and at the same time you get to meet interesting people. I'm Lesley Kaplan. Welcome you here, whether you're joining live, which is always fabulous. I love to see the live group. And a little thing behind the scenes, we actually get to chat behind the scenes before we start the recording. So for those of you watching the recording, next time you want to chat behind the scenes, you're welcome to join us live as well. So what do we have for you today? Firstly, as you all know in the news, another emotional week with families reuniting, and also the fact that we have many that are still haven't had the chance to reunite. And today is also 500 days since the start of the war. Yes, 500 round days. So that is something that we are all aware of. So what do we have for you today? Firstly, thank you as always to our co-sponsor, to Nardis Advisors. And I'm going to spotlight now. I'm going to remove my spotlight and I'm going to be focusing now on spotlighting our guest. And I'll tell you a little bit who she is. Known to many of you, and I love her bright blue, which is, or I don't know what kind of blue is this called. I'm not actually sure what kind of blue it's called.
Kind of a
It's
royal
a really
blue.
deep view of royal blue, exactly.
Fire
And I
blue.
actually said to Bryna Lee, I was about to wear my blue sweater of the same color. So luckily I didn't, although it wouldn't have been too bad if we had coordinated colors. So who is Bryna Lee Jacobson? I feel like I'm really hosting a friend here. I've known Bryna Lee for probably about 12, 13 years, something like that, from our old town. And also, I think if I'm not mistaken, you joined one of my business courses many years ago. That was also about 12, 13 years ago. And we've met up since over the years. So Bryna Lee Jacobson, who made Aliyah in 2009 from Chicago, she is the founder of My Tech Tutor, which assists people of all ages with their tech, whether it's their phones, whether it's their tablets, whether it's their computers, whatever it is. She assists you and guides you through it. She's always very positive, bubbly, and known to many of us here, not just as a colleague, but as a friend. So welcome, Bryna Lee. We're delighted to have you here with us today. Please share with us your story, not just about tech, but about making Aliyah, growing up in the US. I'm not sure if you grew up in Chicago or if you just made Aliyah from there. And tell us just anything maybe that we don't know, funny stories, challenges, anything that comes to mind.
Well, good morning. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And thank you for everyone who's here. Thank you for having me. And especially thank you to Hashem for the privilege that I get to live in Eretz Yisrael and be part of everything that's going on, all the historic things that are happening. Okay, yes. So my name is Bryna Lee Jacobson, and the business is called My Tech Tutor. I'm actually named for my mother, who was named for her grandmother, Bryna Lee. And there's kind of a funny family story involved with my mother deciding to give me her name, even though that wasn't a traditional thing to do. And I won't go through the whole story, but the funny, not ha-ha funny, but ironic part was once I was already here in Israel, when my mother passed away, and we put up those, those black and white signs that are for what happens when a person dies, it had my name because it was my grandmother's name, and it caused a bit of a hoopla in the community because there was confusion, and we had to make sure people understood, no, it was my mother and it wasn't me. But anyway, on a lighter note, you may recognize me from, I have this stance, if you've seen my cards, My Tech Tutor, and my advertising. A lot of times people, when I meet them, they'll say, oh yeah, I know you, you're My Tech Tutor. And they hold up their arms just like that. And I love that. It's some branding that I learned. So as I was going through what was I going to say today, how was I going to talk to you and share something about my life, I kind of did a review. It was kind of like a cheshbon hanefesh for me to say, well, what are the things that are important? What do I want to express? What do I want to share with you? So it's really great exercise. So on that, another thing to thank Lesley for this opportunity. One thing I have to say is that I feel so blessed that I get to do something that I really love doing, and I do it all the time, helping other people but in a way that gives me such pleasure, and it also gives me parnasa. And so just what a great bracha to be able to do that. And that is part of my theme of what I want to talk to you about, because I feel like throughout my life, I have reinvented myself many numbers of times. In fact, I believe if I was going to give advice to someone coming on aliyah, to be to be prepared to think about how you would choose to reinvent yourself, like not to come to Israel to think I'm just going to move from the community I'm in and plop myself down in Israel, and it's going to be the same thing, only it's going to be in Hebrew. No, this is a whole new culture, a whole new way of life, and it gives us all the opportunity to decide who do we want to be. We can be a different person, or accent different attributes, or go after different kinds of goals or interests that we have. So it's, for me, it's been a very long and winding road. And I know that it's a core belief that Hashem is involved in all of our lives in every single way, the smallest thing. I feel like this great gift that in many of the things that have happened to me in my life, I can, I can see it's been revealed to me in some way. I can really see Hashem's hand in how I've been moved around the chessboard to have certain things happen. So first of all, I grew up in Chicago, Illinois. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, an ethnically Jewish neighborhood. I went to public school, but most of the kids were Jewish. So much so that on Rosh Hashanah, even though it wasn't a legal holiday, you could roll a bowling ball down the halls for how many kids were actually in school. Teachers knew not to plan anything important. And sometimes even the children who were not Jewish took the day off because there was nothing happening. But in spite of growing up in what was like in some ways a Jewish environment, it was not a religiously Jewish environment, at least for me at all. So I grew up with lacking a lot of knowledge that surrounds Jewish ritual, that so many things I didn't know at all. One of the things that I had a great opportunity, there was a time when my mother was the secretary to the rabbi of a conservative synagogue. And this happened to be at the time when the children who were in my grade, like around seventh and eighth grade, where there was b'nai mitzvahs happening, mostly bar mitzvahs in those days. And so I participated. They were mostly going to this particular synagogue. It was called B'nai Jacob in Rogers Park of Chicago. And because of my mother working there, I got to go to Sunday school, which was a brand new experience. And I got to participate in an operetta that we put on that was the story of Purim. And I played Queen Esther. And since that time, the story of Purim has resonated for me and has interested me. And in fact, I have a favorite book written by one of my friends and clients by the name of Rabbi Hillel Milgram, whose wife, Debbie Alvashalom, was very active in the AACI. And this is a book that I reread every year because of the insights into the story. But anyway, so I was fortunate enough to have this nice upbringing, but not really knowing about who I am Jewishly. In my family, we would get together for a Rosh Hashanah dinner, but to someone else, it could have been a Thanksgiving dinner. It really wasn't, it wasn't observably Jewish in the way that I know it now, but it was a warm family and I'm blessed to have grown up there. I had a wonderful opportunity as a child, as a young person. I went to the University of Illinois and I studied business and I studied accounting. Sort of, my bachelor's degree is in psychology, but because I felt that it was urgent that I be able to be employable coming right out of the box, coming right out of school without an advanced degree, I also studied business and accounting and sat for the CPA exam. So by the time I was the summer after my college years, I was already a certified public accountant and working in accounting. So this gets to one of my fun stories of where it feels like Hashem's hand was so obvious, because when I was a teenager, I managed to talk. Uh, I, I had a part-time job at an auto parts store, and I managed to talk the owners into letting me be their first time ever delivery person. So I was delivering auto parts from this auto parts store to all these neighborhood gas stations. And if you remember, when gas stations were actually service stations too. So this was a fun experience for me for the summer. And fast forward to later, when I graduated from university and I was working as a traveling auditor. I had a little bit of an experience where I had a minor traffic accident where I broke my ankle and couldn't travel. So I chose to, and because I couldn't travel, I was stationed at a client that was near my old neighborhood. And I decided to go back to the old neighborhood just to say hi to some of my friends that I hadn't seen in a long time at one particular Texaco gas station. And lo and behold, a young guy walks out, a young guy with a kippah in a green Texaco uniform, really comes out from under a car, and I meet him, and he was my Bashir. That's my AJ, my husband AJ, who I met when he was working as an auto mechanic. So it was kind of like, oh, wow, this job that I had brought me to this. And I knew right away, I know people have trouble believing this, but I knew right away that he was the one, that he was my Bashir. And I had dated in college, and he wasn't the first time I ever met someone. I just knew this was it. I even told my girlfriend, Rachel, this is the guy. And sure enough, it's 43 years later that we're married. So that came to be true, and that was kind of a remarkable thing.
And you see, you've still got stars in your eyes, which is amazing after 43 years.
Yeah, I feel like what an amazing blessing. People say love at first sight doesn't happen, but it happened for me. I actually had to pursue him a little bit because he was very shy, and so here's the thing that's funny about this also is that he was, at the time, he was working as a mechanic, but he was also going to the Skokie Yeshiva, the HTC, Hebrew Theological College. He grew up in a frum family. And from his family's background, or his family's point of view, I'm sure they must have had a lot of heartbreak and tears about, here was their son who was kind of like not following a path that they would think, or, off the derech or whatever. I look at it like it was part of Hashem's plan, because if he was completely on the derech at the time, he would not have even spoken to me, let alone dated me or married me. So it was like a gift that I had this person. And he's wearing a kippah, okay, which in those days I said a yarmulke. I didn't even know the word kippah. And yet, even though I saw that, because of my lack of knowledge, I didn't even recognize what is the significance. Like nowadays, if you would see someone with a kippah, you would judge, or yes, that probably means they keep kosher and they keep Shabbat and various different things that go along with when you see someone with a kippah. But I didn't even know these things. And I probably sound like really silly, but I didn't understand these things. So anyway, we dated and we married, and we had a kosher wedding, and that's a whole other thing. But that was fantastic. And so it was kind of a long and winding road, and we were living in a suburb of Chicago. And one of the things, again, hashgacha pratit, my father-in-law, Alav Shalom, at the time before we married, he insisted that in order for him to give his permission and his blessing for us to marry, we had to promise that we would raise our children by giving them a Jewish education. And in my ignorance, I really didn't know what he meant by this. To me, I thought it meant you send them to Hebrew school or Sunday school. And it wasn't until later that I found, after our dear son Sam, was going to go in kindergarten, I thought he would be going to the local kindergarten that he could walk to. And no, my husband said to me, "Don't you remember that promise you made to Pa?" he has to go to day school. We promised a Jewish education. So I learned something new I didn't know. I hadn't questioned it. So he went to Solomon Schechter in Northbrook, Illinois. So why is this important? It's important because it sort of led me again on a path. Because how did I ever get here to be a frum person living in Eretz Yisrael? So what happened was we started being involved in a kiruv organization where my husband liked to go to their mechitza minyan, even though we were sending Sam to Solomon Schechter, which is a conservative school. So Sam was about second grade, so 7 years old or so, where one day he asked us, he said, okay, well, I should preface this by saying in the mechitza minyan, sometimes they didn't have a minyan and they would have to go out on the street, when they got to a certain point in davening, they would have to go outside to try to grab somebody to make a minyan. So my son said to us one day, from the voices of babes, the wisdom, he said, why is it that on Shabbos, we can't finish the praying until you go out and get somebody? There's a girl on the other side of the mechitza. Why can't she do anything? In my school, girls, lay in the Torah and lead the tefillot and the praying. And that led us to a real soul searching opportunity once again to say, well, what are we really trying to teach our son? What do we want? What's going on? And it could have gone either way. It was a bit of a process, but the end result was I said, I'm ready to move forward and we can do more and become more observant. My one condition was we couldn't live in the community where we currently lived because there wasn't a community there, like to be able to walk to the synagogue or to be able to get, kosher meats, and the school was a far drive away. He didn't have any friends that would be close by. I said, if we're going to make a go of this, we're going to have to move to a community where everything's going to be in walking distance, because I don't want Shabbos, I said it then, I don't want Shabbos to be like a bad thing to our son. I want it to be something he looks forward to. It has to be joyous. So he has to have friends to play with. It can't be his current friends who he has to say no to. No, I can't go to the movies. No, I can't go on my bike or whatever. So we moved to Skokie, and it was a fantastic thing. This was in 1999. Hashem just made everything happen. I mean, we sold our apartment before we even listed it. That's a whole other story. I don't want to take up all the time, but it literally happened on a Motzi Shabbat overnight. I just decided we were going to sell and someone wanted to come and see it. And that was that. So we moved to Skokie, and again, I still didn't really have Israel on my radar, but this was 1999. And because shortly after when the second Intifada started in Israel, our synagogue and 2 other synagogues decided we were going to have a mission to come to Israel and support Israelis. And this was going to be January of 2002. And people all around me, my friends, my family, my coworkers, thought I was crazy to want to go into a war zone. And then 9/11 happened, and the whole perspective on where it was safe to go and where it was safe to be and whether I was crazy to go, like it shifted in a very fundamental way. And anyway, we came in 2002. It was, I was sick almost the whole time, had laryngitis. So I always joke and say it was my husband's favorite trip ever because I wasn't talking the whole time.
Right, because you couldn't talk or answer him.
But anyway, on that trip, and my husband has said this to me, and other of my friends who were there said, I said right then and there, we have to move to Israel. Like that was it. And so that was the beginning of us trying to make aliyah, which I had hoped would be after my son graduated from elementary school, which would have been 2004. But it didn't happen until 2009 when he was in his gap year. So anyway, so we're here. And one of the things that it makes me have try to be understanding, every single person that's here, Baruch Hashem that we're here, but every person who's not here yet, I was one of the people who wasn't here yet. Not everyone can be here yet, and anyone and maybe not everyone is awake to the idea that they want to be here yet. So like, I like to help people to get that consciousness, but I couldn't get it until I was ready for it. So when I was ready, it happened. And no matter where we are, and this is a philosophy for my life, no matter where we are, whether you're talking religiously, politically, it doesn't matter what area, there's always going to be somebody who's on this side who thinks you don't do enough. And there's always going to be on this side somebody who thinks you do too much and you're crazy. So like, wherever you are is okay for where you are, and we have to, embrace everyone who's on either side of us that doesn't think the way we think. So anyway, so we're here. So when I got here, I volunteered at the AACI and American Association of Americans in
Americans and
Israel.
Canadians in Israel.
Canadians in Israel. It's a mouthful. And because of the volunteering, and it was at a time when they were moving from their old location on Pinsker to their then new location in Talpiot, which is now their old location, I had computer skills that they valued and they hired me. And that was really the beginning of me becoming my tech tutor, because I became friends and acquainted with so many. They just had an army of volunteers and so many nice and wonderful people. And gosh, living in Israel, you get to meet people from every background, from a nuclear scientist, a brain surgeon, an astronaut, an engineer. I mean, and every other thing is, social workers, palmachim, you name it. I met so many great people. And one thing that I noticed was people would be lamenting the problems they were having, either with their computer or with their smartphone. And I sort of started helping just as a little thing. I'm just helping them, trying to get their phone to ring louder or various different things. And that opened the idea to me that this could be a business. I could be my tech tutor and I could be the one who could come and help. And what I've discovered along the way is that people really love to have a person that they can call. I've had people who've called me who've said, I've had your card sitting on my desk for 5 years, and now I'm calling finally. Like, one of the things I try to do when I do get a call is I try to get to see that person really as soon as possible, because I know that it took a lot to get to the point where they decided they're going to ask someone to help them. And so I really, with rare exception, just try to get to see them while they're ready to be seen, so that I can reassure them and help them. And excuse me, my nose is tickling me. So that's one of the things, that's one of my philosophies, which is that I really want to help people. Like I said, this is like the greatest gift to me, to be able to do this and have people enjoy it. It's not just really about tech for me. When I come into someone's home, first of all, they're opening their home to me. It starts with, can I give you something to drink very often, or, something like that. And we sit and we talk a little bit about what it is they want to accomplish. And just so very often they may have one thing in mind. Some password is troubling them, or how do they get into their bank or their Kupach Olim or something. But as we go on, I say, oh, did you know there's an easier way to do this? Or I see how you're, doing this. Would it help you if we organize this in a different way? Or like, I'm just always looking for the things that can make their life easier and make their time in front of the screen more enjoyable, less anxious. I've had people that doing anything on the computer or on their phone is so anxiety producing. So having me lets them take a deep breath, and they know Bryna Lee's got this. I can call Bryna Lee. If I make a mistake, if anything goes wrong, if I'm not sure of anything, Bryna Lee's at the other end of the line, and I really try to make myself available. I call myself concierge tech support because I want you to think of me differently than the person who is somebody who doesn't care, who is some anonymous person on a phone line that you don't know if you could trust. I want to be that trusted person that cares about you, that will help you, that will, get you through teaching you or doing for you. So that's a dual role that I play, because in some cases I'm coming and I'm tutoring people so that they can be independently working on things on their own. And in some cases, there's people who just want me to be the person who's with them when they need to do certain things, because that way they feel comfortable. Like I have somebody that when she buys airline tickets, she wants me online with her. She just wants to make sure it goes properly. And we've done it many times. And if it makes her feel good that I'm doing it with her, I'm going to do it with her as many times as she wants. And I'm going to tell over however many times someone needs. I sit there, I'm patient, and I like to tell you or show you, there's a lot of pointing, there's a lot of press here, and make sure that you're feeling comfortable. I'm just checking my notes to see if I left out anything that was really important. I have recently moved.
Because we are coming to the end.
Yes.
So also tell people how they can get hold of you.
Okay. I've recently moved from Malaya to Meme after 15 years, which I loved, and created many friends and friends who feel like family. And only recently in June moved to Beit Shemesh. So now I'm open up to seeing people in Beit Shemesh. If you'd like to reach me, the best way to reach me is probably my email or WhatsApp, but I'll give you my email address, which is my name, Bryna Lee, BRYNALEE @gmail.com. And I'm even going to type it in the chat for you.
Great. And how many times do people call you Bryna? Do you answer them, or it's always Bryna Lee?
So I always answer to Bryna if people call me Bryna. My mother, it's a whole other story about how my mother said, you're Bryna Lee, you're not just Bryna, but I will answer to Bry or Bryna Lee. And through my life, people had a lot of trouble. They'll call me Bryna and Brenda and Bruna and like all different things. As they say, just don't call me late for dinner.
Wow. Okay, Bryna Lee or Bryna or whatever you would like us to call you. I thank you so much for being our spotlight today on the Monday Motivation Spotlight. Don't run away, ladies and gents, because we have an important announcement to make as well. And I just love your positive nature, your bubbly nature. You've always been like that. I think I've never seen you without a smile on your face, whether it's online or whether it's in person. So just that special personality, no doubt, comes across and makes you special. And that's your USP, what I call unique selling proposition, that makes you different as opposed to the average tech person that comes and doesn't smile, that you can literally hold your clients' hands along the way and be a friend to them. And that is definitely, fulfilling an area or a niche in this world, in this business world, which perhaps didn't exist. So thank you so much for being our guest on the Monday Motivation Spotlight. And we wish you obviously much hatzlacha in the future and also in your new place of residence. So, ladies and gents, we've come to the end of another Monday Motivation Spotlight on the 500th day since the war started. Wishing Am Yisrael only good times, peaceful times, and of course, the safe release of all our hostages. In addition to seeing you next week on the Monday Motivation Spotlight, many of you will have seen that we're having another event, a business event, this coming Wednesday evening for men and women in business. I'm not going to go into details here, but if you don't yet know about it or if you haven't signed up, it's something that you definitely want to check out because it'll make a difference in your business. Just go to my website, lesleykaplan.com, and look under the events section and sign up for that. A free event, online event is going to be fabulous. So thank you again to our sponsors, Nardis Advisors. Thank you to you for joining us, whether it's live or whether it's via the recording. And I remind you too that you can check out other amazing recordings on my YouTube channel as well as Spotify, because we've had some amazing guests in the last 500 days, less 2 weeks that we've been doing this podcast. So I'm Yisrael Chai. Thank you again, Bryna Lee, for being a fabulous guest, very inspiring. And we wish you a safe day I'm Yisrael Chai, and we'll see you either on Wednesday or next week on the Monday Motivation Spotlight. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.